Well, like Joe was telling you, my name is Reuben, and I'm joined tonight by my wonderful wife, Priya. Now, we do get to join hands to teach here and there, but it's always special to have you with me. For the past 15 years, we've been here on staff, as well as having our own kids. We got 5 kids here at CCA, and we're very blessed to not just be a pastor and a family here, but to be a CCA family as well.
We love being small group leaders, going on the retreats with many of your students, having lunch with them, praying with them, and chapels with them, like Reuben said. But Reuben and I are also the recipients of Christian school in middle school during those precarious years of middle school and high school. So we believe that the investment of Christian teachers and leaders in our lives is what has impacted us to not do this as a job, but as a passion and a calling for our children. And so we do believe, like all of our teachers and administrators, that when we talk to a teen, we can help influence them, help redirect them, help put them on God's course, or reveal God's purpose and plan for them. But tonight, we're not talking to students, we're talking to you as parents, because here's why. We believe that parent to parent, we help one another. We co-labor and collaborate together and add blessings to our legacies for generations to come.
That's very true. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 16 through 17. And we have just a couple of short points that we want to kind of bring up to your awareness this evening. Ephesians 5, 16 through 17 talks about how we ought to redeem time. And the title of our talk this evening is Time, Technology, and Your Tween or Teen. And so thinking about time, thinking about how God has given us each this set of time, ourselves individually as well as our kids. It's a commodity that we can't purchase. No matter how much money you have in the bank, you can't buy a few extra moments, and our kids can't either. We've all got to use our time very wisely, right? You guys with me? We've got to use our time to the best of our ability. We've got to teach our kids to use their time very, very well. And when I think about that verse, about the Lord reminding us in Ephesians chapter 5 that we ought to redeem our time, buy back our time, and use our time strategically. I want to ask the guys in the back to put up the first slide. We got 3 slides tonight. The first slide is this. The average preteen spends 10 hours a day on media, 10 hours a day. So if you think about that 10 hours times the amount of days that they're in school or in the week, they essentially have become full-time media consumers. And that number boggles my mind when I think about the amount of time that my sons, my daughters could spend on the internet, could spend on their phones, could spend on their social media apps, or even text messaging, iMessaging, and what they're exposed to as that happens. The question is this: what does that mean for your kids? What does that imply for your family? What are the implications for you as an individual? If they're spending that much time, whether it's active in school, doing the right thing, or after school maybe mixing a little bit of play and fun in with the right thing, or even for some of our kids, even susceptible to our family as well, maybe some things that they shouldn't be doing. 90%, listen to this, 90% of kids are online today. All around the world, 90% of kids are online. I know there's some families in the room this evening who would say, no, my kids, this is what they do. We've only got this kind of technology in our house. And there's other families who they've got every accessible device that we could have. And so there may be a range tonight of ways that your family applies technology.
So 91% of teens go on the internet on mobile devices. The average tween, that's not a teen, a tween texts 30 times a day. For teens, up to 40 to 50 times a day. Now, how many of those texts are you getting or are to you? And the reality is that 47% of teens have Instagram, Facebook, what's the other one? Snapchat, other things.
I don't use them, I'm sorry.
47%, that is a pretty high, that's half of our kids basically in here. And so these are just a few statistics just to kind of set a backdrop for you.
Now listen to this. It's estimated that the buying power of today's American tween is roughly $40 billion. Right? So if you're a business owner and you're a marketer, and you know that this age group, 6th through 8th grade, has got $40 billion to spend, then what do you think our world wants our kids to know? What do you think the enemy wants our kids to know? And if there's $40 billion per year to back that type of information coming to our kids' minds, man, what are they seeing? What are the ads that are popping up? What are the things that they're seeing on the banners below or on the side ranges of our computers that the world wants them to see? Listen to this next statistic. The largest consumers of pornographic material are boys aged 12 to 17. And this issue is wrecking and filling our computer screens every single day. Even as adults, when an image pops up on my screen, a marketing image, I've got to be so disciplined to turn that off, to erase those things from my computer, and to turn my mind and turn my head. When the taxi cabs flash in front of our car, I've got to be disciplined to put my eyes down and to show my kids. But what if nobody was looking? And my middle school student was by himself or herself. Listen to this. Many kids in this range, 6th through 8th grade, exhibit addictive behavioral responses when confronted. And so they pull out their phone and they're looking, and you say, hey, did you finish your homework? No. Well, then give me your phone. What's their responses? And a lot of professionals are using the term addiction when it comes to the way in which our kids are responding to our commands. Now, that's a big word. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but they listed out a couple of ways that you can know if this has gone overboard. Has your child ever lied to you when they are confronted with losing their phone or their iPad or their laptop? Has your child ever had adverse grades because of the way that they've used or consumed media? Have they ever manipulated a situation in order to get their phone back? And some of those things are pretty common. I can even say the same is true with my kids. But if those things are consistent and true, you got to begin to ask yourself, have they crossed over some lines? Have they allowed themselves to get in a place where you've got to dig in deeper and find yourself thinking this through? Now listen to this, the other side, us as parents. On Labor Day, I was reading my USA Today app, and here's what I found, an article about how Americans can't stop and won't stop working. 41% of Americans did not take a vacation last year. Think about your vacation schedule. Did you take one last year? 41% didn't take a vacation. We're more than often bringing work home and working on holidays. And so if our kids are spending 10 hours a day on media, and if we, as working Americans, find ourselves working inordinate amount of times and bringing work home, then who's pointing our kids towards the cross? And if we're just waiting for our school to do it, there are pieces that will be missing. You see, we have a problem, right? Wouldn't you agree? We have an issue that's on our hands that God has called you as a father and you as a mother, me as a father, and Priya as a mother to say, what will we do about it? We've had the privilege this past year to be exposed to some of the great organizations that are working with churches and schools and families to help educate and protect the eyes and the minds and the souls of our kids. In every book that I read, every conference that I go to, every speaker that I hear, I've picked out two themes that we want to share with you tonight. Two things that are, it's almost as if you paid $1,000 to go to the conference, you're still going to get these two themes. So you don't have to pay anything. And I'm going to give them to you. So if you had a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, if we can flip to slide number 2, the first of those 2 points is there's a need for relational solutions. And the question is, am I building the type of relationship with my child that will help him or her come to me with the victories or defeats of life? There's a verse in Joshua chapter 24, verse 15 that says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You know, in Joshua, think back to Joshua's time. If it was going to be his whole entire house, him and his spouse, his wife. For you single parents, for you as a single parent, mom or dad, if you're going to serve the Lord, it takes not just your kids, but you, beginning with you, and then trickling down into your kids' lives, together strategically saying, we will serve the Lord. How will that happen? It takes strategic parenting that begins with you sitting down and hearing from the Lord and then saying, how will I pour this into my kids? You know, the truth is, if you read research, that your kids in middle school, they still look up to you. They still look up to you. There will come a day where they realize that you're not Superman. But in middle school, there's still this sense of superhero that they see in dad. There's still this sense of I want to be like my mom as I grow older. Their kids look up to you. They still want to do what you ask them to do, although there's a struggle in their soul with sin, but they still look up to you and want to do what you ask them to do.
So what do we do when there's a content breach, when a filter doesn't just catch that thing that slips through? Because the truth is that it's not about if our children will see inappropriate material, it's when. And that happened to us personally. It was this past May where we were at a public function and one of our children had been exposed to inappropriate, mature material. And immediately this child went and found my husband and shared with him what had happened. And upon arriving at home, this child again told me about what happened. And I asked this person, child, what, I'm trying to protect the identity of this child. I did ask his permission to share with you, and that was granted. But so this child had said to me, Mom, I was really scared when it happened, and I didn't want to come to you or Dad. I was afraid, I was embarrassed, I was angry, and I was fearful. I didn't know how you and Dad were going to respond. But then I knew it was the right thing to do because you and Dad always talk about what to do when this happens. Parents, we have to hold on to this. Parents, teachers, grandparents in the room. We have to believe that our relationship with the Lord and our relationship with our children will trump the fears, the anxiety, the shame, peer pressure, the guilt, and hold on to that because, listen, what they're going through, they may not want to share initially with us, but it's important that we take the time to talk to them, push through it passionately, role play with your children, and just have these conversations with them. I know that in middle school, they want to socialize, they want their friends and those relationships, but parents, some tips, just be that driver for them. Invite all the kids over to your house, feed them, they'll come to your home. To be a fly on the wall is so important. And for our 7th grader, there are things that we still haven't shared with him. We've talked about sex, we've laid the foundation because we're leading someplace. Now our high schoolers, on the other hand, our 9th and 10th grader, there is nothing that is off the table. We have laid everything on the table and talked about it freely and openly with them. We've pushed the envelope with them because it's necessary. If we don't talk about these things with our children, well, then the media TV does. They talk about it in their idle time with their friends and their peers. And so listen, if we wait till senior year, it becomes a foreign language. They push back and they said, wait a minute, I don't even understand what you're trying to do right now. It's too late. Start laying the foundation, having these conversations with our middle schoolers.
Yeah, essentially, when we are beat to the punch and they learn about sex from some other source, our information becomes irrelevant. And so I want to encourage you tonight. The conversations I've had with my sons and my daughters all began at 7 or 8 years old, 7, 8, or 9, having apple pie and ice cream, cherry pie, whatever it is, and we're sitting and we're having these weirdo conversations. I'm reading the book and Priya's laughing at me because she can see I'm so nervous. And then it goes to a weekend away where we've done Passport to Purity, and then it's the weekly devotionals, and it's putting the books away and just building a relationship. But if it weren't for those consistent conversations with my son, then he would not have come to me when the problem happened. If it weren't for those hours that we've looked at each other and had those unusual conversations, even before puberty, I would have been irrelevant in his life. So I want to encourage you today to build relationships. Talking to professionals that are doing this every single day, day in and day out, relationships trump any sort of great technology that you're going to have in your house. So I want to encourage you, build relationships with your kids. The third point and final point, if you can throw the last slide up, is we need a growing awareness for a holistic set of technological solutions. A whole approach to technological solutions. How are you doing in your home when it comes to the Wi-Fi signal and how you've protected them via your router? How are you doing with the laptop, the desktop, the iPads, and all the other tablet devices, even the cell phones that are in their pockets? Have you thought through a set of solutions that can help to protect your child? I've got 3 words. The words are monitoring, filtering, and accountability. Do you know the text message conversations that are going back and forth? Do you want to know the conversations that are going back and forth? Have you blocked websites that you don't want your children to see? And are you having conversations about what you're finding on your child's phone or tablet? Those 3 things can help you to see the breakdown, or when the breakdown is going to happen in your child's life. There's really a progression of tools when you think about it. The desktop that's in the kitchen, the laptop that can go anywhere, the iPads, the phones that come off of your Wi-Fi signal and then into their friend's signal. When they're on their own data plans, are you thinking through to that level protection for your sons and for your daughters? You know, we've got a grouping of resources outside, and if you go outside of these doors, on the theater countertops, we've got some books that we've used personally. We've got a listing of resources as it comes to technology and what you can use there. A whole set of resources that we've worked through and said, hey, I think this one's easy enough, but yet full enough for you to say, I feel like my child's protected. But if you put one thing on and then you forget about it, guess what? Your child's going to outgrow that protection as they grow in the things that they are using. We also want to encourage you to think about the parenting classes. If you haven't come yet, they're starting on October 5th. On Wednesday night, come and check out our parenting classes, as well as the rest of the resources that are there on that table. We're hoping that you are able to make use of those things: cell phone contracts, behavioral contracts, all kinds of things that are out there. Too many to list because our time is short. We want to wrap with some final thoughts.
This past summer, Reuben and I had the privilege to take our family to Arkansas. And when we were there at Little Rock, we visited a high school. It's called Central High School. And there was an incident that happened in the 50s. And for those of you that are unaware of it, there was racial tension all throughout the country. And 9 students stood up and wanted to desegregate. 9 high school students. And one of them said this, and this is what stuck out to me. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Parents, teachers, community. If we don't stand up and fight for our children, if we don't show them that we're not afraid, that technology doesn't scare us, we can't surrender, we can't give in, we can't be too tired, we have to fight for our children, and we have to do this together. So let me rephrase that question. If not for our children, then who? If not now, then when? Who will fight for our children? Community. I add one more thing to that. If God is for us, then who can be against us?